Well, it's December the 12th. I'm back again here. Supreme Court moved fairly actively, and I think in a very disappointing fashion. As I pointed out in my video yesterday, I had very little confidence they would ultimately do anything that would overturn the projected election results, let's call them. Given that all the electors had been certified and everybody was set to vote in a couple of on the Monday here, the 14th, I just couldn't see them doing it. Now, legally, I think there was a good case to do it. I mean, they took the coward's way out and actually hid behind the ruling of standing, which of course gives them the answer. They never have to give an answer to why we were wrong. All they have to do is say, well, you don't have a right to bring the case, and therefore you lose, and forget the evidence because we're never even going to look at it. And I just saw a senator from Louisiana, and I'm not going to bash him because I think people need to be very strong here. Now, this is something you got to think about. We need all these Republicans because every last one of them is a if you will, a pawn, if you will, or they're a part of a wall to block a Democrat effort to literally take over the country and turn into a one-party state. I mean, that is what we're literally fighting about. Everybody's sitting here calm and, oh, everything's cool. But what's behind the scene is not cool. It's very dangerous. This country is in a precarious situation. And therefore, what I'm saying is very simply that, yes, there is a real risk of a one-party state here. And I've been saying this ever since I've been making these political-oriented videos and kind of moved away from my normal scientific topics I really prefer. And so the situation here is on the Supreme Court, my opinion is, I think what's been signaled in the last two decisions, we finally got a little feeling. I was saying between that 4 people are needed to take the case. How many people are even interested? It turns like it apparently is 2. I think the thing with the Trump-appointed justices, I think their attitude is that they don't want to look like they're a pawn of Trump. They know they have like a lifetime appointment, and they feel that their reputation will be tainted if they were to take too strong of a pro-Trump position. I think on this particular situation, and I think the other 2 are appointed by previous the Bushes basically, and I think they're more in position to say what they really think. So that's kind of it on that. I understand now that Lynn Wood's case has reached the Supreme Court docket, and I guess I understand that Sidney Powell has filed her 4 cases too, which would be kind of a different approach to the situation than the issue of whether or not Texas has standing. I thought the fact that Trump had joined the suit would give it standing just because he does have an interest in it. Oh well. But again, the court can decide whatever it wants to decide. If it wants to decide that whether something's a vegetable or a fruit, it can do that, and it did do that once about the tomato, right? So it can also decide whether 2 + 2 = 4 or 5. You understand that. The only thing is it doesn't have the power. It literally doesn't have the men with the guns, or now I guess we should say the people with the guns, we're going to be gender neutral on this, who can enforce it. And the fact of the matter is they don't want to create what they would perceive as a constitutional crisis. And remember, the Supreme Court itself is under threat. They're under threat from Chuck Schumer, who's threatening to destroy the Supreme Court system by packing it with political activist liberals who will vote the party line, not people like the Republican appointees who try to do something like normal jurisprudence. And so I think they see that as a threat to the Constitution and the country, and they believe that preserving their own independence is probably the most important thing. Maybe the hardest core Trump supporter out there from the rallies doesn't feel that way, but I think that's their perception. So that's why they're doing what they're doing, I think. Also, I have, as I pointed out before, they do live in a D.C. environment that's 94% Democrat, full of Antifas and BLM supporters, with a local mayor that doesn't seem to want to protect Republicans from street attacks. And they don't live in something like the White House with the Secret Service security barriers around it. So they have to consider that their children are in the schools there. They live in the communities and basically upper middle class level dwellings in the residential neighborhoods. I mean, they're not really in a protected estate. I mean, George Soros can be as jerk as he is, but I'm sure he has armed security and an estate somewhere to protect him, as does a lot of these troublemakers. But, but the Supreme Court doesn't have that level of security. At best, they may have a couple of federal marshals assigned. So I think maybe I'm going too far with that aspect of it. But to me, I would think if I was in that position, that would have to be kind of haunting me a little bit. And remember, you don't have your handy little modern sporting rifle with an adequate magazine in it because of the laws in D.C. And I can't imagine the Supreme Court justice really whipping out such a weapon to defend himself. But, but all I'm trying to say is I think there is a physical threat, there's a psychological threat, and there's actually a legal threat from the potential if the Democrats do get control of the Senate. And I think given that, I think their attitude is to take a pass on this, and I think we're going to find that they're not going to entertain anything that's going to disrupt the vote on Monday, and that the wheels are there to install Biden in office. Now, I was sort of disappointed in Senator Cassidy saying that it was a fair election. There's nothing about the legitimacy of the vote in any of this to speak of. At best, it can say that the case is difficult to actually prove to a certain standard. Like something is true, but can you prove it? I use a mathematical example. Take the set of real numbers, a subset of the set of real numbers, and say it has an upper bound. Prove it has a least upper bound. Well, of course it has one. Prove it. I had that problem once in a class my junior year in college. I think I struggled with that for about a week to actually prove that. I mean, it ends up being a proof of contradiction. But the point is, the court system is sort of like that. You can know a person's guilty of sin, like, say, O.J. Simpson, but he was acquitted, right? Okay, he was acquitted. So you see what I'm getting at here. And I don't care if they're a member of the Federalist Society, if they were appointed by Trump himself, or whatever. These judges down the line totally were unwilling to actually even entertain the case. The timeline of 5 weeks between the election and the actual vote, or is it 6 weeks? But anyway, it's a very short timeline. The complexity of all the different issues that have been raised, the Dominion voting systems, the people that were voting that were out of state that shouldn't have been voting, the illegal voters, the potential for fraudulent ballots, the election officials that didn't do things correctly. All that is very complex, and to prove it is very difficult. So it becomes effectively easier for them just to punt and let the thing happen. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we are. I know there's another Stop the Steal rally. My attitude on this is that we should still go through all the appeals. We shouldn't just stop. My opinion is let's make them continue to do what they're doing. And I think the case that's going to be made in the end is that nobody ever looked at the evidence too seriously, except us. And I think certain House committees and Senate committees and in the states. And I think where we have to go from here on is to work for election reform. We need to have a tighter electoral system, in order to protect the vote and to stop things like this from happening again, or at least reduce their probability. One problem seems to be that when you have districts that are too partisan in their structure, there's not enough people from the other party to come in and watch what they're doing. And I think we need to find some kind of state level reforms about that, because it's gotten out of control, obviously. And, that kind of gives me the general thought of where we are right now. I mean, I think that there will be additional appeals, and we'll have to see. I mean, the Supreme Court is going to have to deal with them. They can swat them away like annoying flies, or they can actually hear one of them. But again, even if they heard it, what would they do? They probably would just remand it to a lower court for hearings, and how long would that take? You see the problem we're facing here. And I've been trying to say this all along. I do, but that doesn't mean that they didn't steal it. Doesn't mean that at all. And I think that shows the vulnerability of our electoral system, and we need to work at the state level to fix things. I think that's one thing that needs to be brought forward and pushed pretty hard. Well, again, that's kind of my spiel on this today. I'm of course very disappointed in the Supreme Court, and they actually underperformed even what I expected. I was thinking that they might have enough taste to at least give us a little bit of a moral victory and then declare something like there's not much we can do about it at this stage that would be, or something of that sort. They wouldn't even do that. And that's sad, but it's real. And like I say, the fight continues. This is not, I mean, in a sense, it's beyond just Trump winning this particular election. First of all, Trump is still going to be out there after this. And he may very well run in 2024, or alternatively, he might be sort of the one who anoints the person who runs. And at his age, whether he wants to go through that again, we'll have to see where he feels like in 3 and 4 years. But I think it's important that he and his movement still have an impact. This idea of starting alternative parties is bogus. All an alternative conservative party would do is split up the vote and guarantee Democrat victories. The fact of the matter, we have to struggle to maintain control of the Republican Party. We have to utilize rhinos when they're convenient to achieve our goals. And at times we need to defeat rhinos in primaries. It's an ongoing, intricate chess game of politics. And we need to think of it that way. In some ways, it's got to be cold and calculating. You know, for instance, I'm very glad that Susan Collins was reelected. I know she's going to vote against us on a lot of things in the next 2 years. But the one thing I think she will not vote against us on is ending the filibuster and blowing up the Constitution. So by rigging the court and therefore making it essentially just a political act rather than an established document. And that's the key thing. It's very important. Who controls the body is very important. And I keep trying to emphasize this to everybody. I don't think a lot of people see it that way, but it is what's most important. And it gives you the base to work. I think there's a good chance in 2022 we will take the House, I think. And the Senate is going to be more difficult just given the lay of the land in that particular year, which is kind of a bunch of Democrat incumbents in Democrat-oriented states. And that's... But anyhow, okay, I guess that's about it for now. I don't want this to run on too long because people don't want to listen too long. Again, if you like these videos and you're on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like if you're on the channel. If you're not on the channel, well, subscribe, and or you can still forward links to people. All for now.